Hi, everyone. This is a very special edition of the Rabbi Shmuley podcast. And for all of you who are watching on social media, here, everywhere around the world, we're so honored to have my dear friend, Consul General of Poland in New York, Adrian Kubicki. Adrian is one of Poland's most senior diplomats anywhere in the world, but especially here in the United States. He is extremely well known to the American public. He robustly and eloquently represents his government. He's a very dear friend of the Jewish community, of the American people, of Israel, and an extremely capable ambassador of his people, which I deeply respect. But Adrian,
thank you very much, Rabbi.
Okay. You're the man of the moment. Your government is at the very center of an astonishing world event that people can almost not comprehend. Poland has taken by press estimates, maybe you can give us a clearer picture, about 1 million refugees. Let's first talk about the situation in Poland, the Ukrainian refugees, and what your government is doing to absorb them.
First of all, we decided since the very beginning this conflict started, we were prepared to this turn of event. This is very unfortunate. Poland took so many actions on the international scene to prevent this war to ever happen. Unfortunately, Mr. Putin decided otherwise. So since this war started, obviously, the vast majority of people started to head their way towards the Polish border. And from the very beginning, we decided as a government and as a state of Poland decided to accept everyone without any extended procedure at the border. Basically, from the very beginning, you just needed to have a simple document that gives you the proof of identity. Not necessarily even a passport. In some cases, we accepted even the birth certificates. And all those people were admitted to Poland without asking any additional questions. Whoever wanted to flee from Ukraine due to war was welcomed to Poland, and it still is because this process is ongoing. Right now, we are having over 1,100,000 people who already crossed the border, but we expect a lot more people to come in the following days, weeks, and maybe months, because we don't know how long this crisis might take. This is a very unique situation, and I think the first that ever happened that with such a huge refugee crisis, because this is a crisis, we didn't have to accepting these refugees to Poland. We didn't have to build or open not even a single refugee camp, no tents for refugees, no centers. All of them were simply accepted by Polish people, ordinary Polish people. They were coming and they're still coming to the border with their transportation, offering accommodation, renting houses, apartments for them, but also accepting them to their households, to their houses, to their apartments. Institutions as well, that they're open for refugees everywhere, all across Poland. So we see the beautiful, huge movement, huge amount of really open hearts of Polish people who are taking everybody who needs help without questions of nationality, ethnicity. That needs to be said that Poland accepted everyone. Regardless of any factors, basically, whoever wanted to flee Ukraine can do it through the Ukrainian-Polish border, still up to this day.
And we see all of the world's news outlets on the Ukrainian-Polish border, and you actually watch the migration of people, the escape of all of these people who have been rendered refugees by Putin's brutal war of aggression. Let's unpack a lot of what you said, Adrian. Firstly, there's been tensions between Poland and Russia for many, many years. And a lot of people are wondering who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. I've always said, and it's a shame it took the world so long to recognize, it's kind of astonishing, that Putin is the face of evil in the modern world. He's a monster, he's a killer. I know you're a diplomat, so you'll be more cautious about using that kind of language. I'm a rabbi, I believe in hating evil. He murders his own people, he murders all his political opponents, and he was very aggressive towards Poland. And for the past few years, Poland has been kind of pressuring the United States to take the threat seriously and to open more bases in Poland, American bases, near the Russian border. in the west of in the west of Poland. I'm sorry, in the extreme east of Poland, and especially with everything Poland went through with Soviet communism over so many decades, they were particularly attuned to the kind of evil that Putin represents as he wants to kind of rebuild this Soviet empire. But do you feel, I'm not asking you to gloat, God forbid, this is a terrible humanitarian crisis. This is the first major ground war in Europe since the Second World War. But do you feel that Poland has had a measure of vindication from a lot of the people who are kind of questioning Poland vis-a-vis Putin now that Putin has really shown irreversibly his true colors to the world?
Well, I think it's not very important at this present moment, although you're right that Poland was vocal for many years what Putin's and contemporary Russia ambition is, the ultimate ambition. The events that happened somewhat 10 years ago in Georgia, when our president was actually the first and only president who decided to go to Georgia and to speak to people there about these ambitions of Putin, he said something that resonates right now, especially, and he said that this is not the end of it. Georgia might be the first at that time, but then Ukraine, then other countries, including Baltic countries, and then Poland, eventually also Poland. So we know that stopping him right now in Ukraine should be the ultimate goal. Somewhat it's unfortunate that our voice has not been heard when we were trying to warn our allies about his intentions. I think that no one really believed that it might happen. Unfortunately, it happened, but it still can be stopped. So as you can see, Poland is very vocal and advocates for many actions, actually as strong as possible, including sanctions, other actions to stop Putin where he is right now as soon as possible before it's too late. And although we don't feel and we don't see that it might come, the serious threat might come to the NATO allies, to any of the NATO's countries. We don't know what is to come in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, if he succeeds in Ukraine right now. So Poland is vocal, has been vocal for many years for what the real plan is for Russia.
Well, the reason why, Adrian, I think it is relevant even now, as the Ukrainian people suffer under a brutal assault that is just shocking us all into numbness. No one can believe this is 2022. And these are almost the same scenes that we saw in black and white from the Second World War. The reason why it's so relevant is that you had a democracy, Poland, up against Putin, an autocracy, a dictatorship. And why would you ever have had to prove who was good and bad here? That's why it's so relevant, because the Ukraine invasion has given the world a moment of moral clarity about freedom, free countries versus fear countries. Russia's a fear country. Even in my community, a lot of people say the Jewish community is protected by Putin and Jews have flourished under Putin. Just imagine what would happen to my community in Russia, the Jewish community, if they were to say anything about Putin. Then you would quickly see he has no friends. But be that as it may, Poland is electrifying the world with taking in 1.1 million refugees in just 2 weeks. That's incredible. When you were telling me the numbers when we were speaking a few days ago, even then it was about 500,000. I couldn't believe it. Now 1.1 million, and it'll only increase, unfortunately. Let's talk about, since this is also for Values University, Adrian, I want to talk about values. Poland seems to have a unique sensitivity to refugees, given how much of modern Polish history is colored by the Second World War. I've been to Poland many times, as you know. Second World War is always present in people's minds. It's always being discussed. Poland was brutally invaded by Nazi Germany on the 1st of September 1939. We had the anniversary just a few years ago, the 80th anniversary. Blitzkrieg decimated the Polish military in about a month. Hundreds of thousands of people died. Later, of course, Hitler would perpetrate a genocide against Polish Jews and against the Polish people. 3 million Jews died on Polish soil, 6 million in total. 3 million other Poles, of course, were murdered in the war. And Poland always fought for freedom, government in exile in London. It was an ally of the United States at the time, fought with the Allies during the Second World War, as Poland now sees America as its ally as well. We have American troops in Poland right now, and President Biden has promised to protect Poland, to use American troops to protect Poland if Poland's invaded. That's incredible. No one wants that. We don't want to see a world war. But let's talk for a moment about why refugees are a particularly valuable issue. It's a values issue for the people of Poland.
Well, first of all, when we look at the history, and you pointed it out, that Polish history, the resemblance, what is happening to Ukraine, or what happened to Ukraine a couple of days ago, and what happened to Poland throughout the history is actually tragic and astonishing at the same time. We feel that we've been through all of that. We know how it starts and we know how it ends. And potentially, maybe not necessarily, since Ukraine might not be allied within the Western structure, neither European Union nor NATO, but has this support of countries like Poland. And Poland, I think, is actually a leading country trying to be vocal of what to do to prevent the tragic turns of events that happened to Poland during the Second World War, so it's not happening to Ukraine. And particularly that during Second World War, Poland fell under two oppressions. First was obviously Nazi Germany. We were fighting also very strongly to keep Poland independent, to defeat the forces that were trying to occupy our countries. Pretty much like Ukraine is right now fighting for their country. Poland was also trying to be vocal at that time that it's not just about Poland, the country, and that might be, and eventually that happened tragically, that this is only where it starts, but the ambition is much broader than just one single country. And we feel that this is pretty much the same case with Ukraine right now. So yet another resemblance. But then Poland was invaded also by Soviets. So we know that enemy, although a lot of things has changed in Russia, also many things has not changed. And we also know this aggression from the Eastern side. So our voice should be heard, and this is not said just to promote Polish point of view, but I think Polish point of view is very special because we've been through it, and well, eventually, obviously, Second World War was tragic for Poland, and what happened afterwards, Poland being pushed towards east in the hands of Soviet Union, was also not good for Poland for another dozens of years. But then our history has a happy end. We finally, we talk about values. I think solidarity is something that you see in the approach towards refugees right now. It's nothing else but solidarity, pure solidarity, compassion and solidarity, something that enabled Poland in the 80s and then in the early 90s to rebuild the country, to defeat communists and start to build new country, a democratic country. We joined NATO, we joined European Union, so we see that this future is also available for Ukraine. But what we hope for is that they won't be forced to go through so many years of difficult history as Poland had to go through. Our path was not easy, but we can do a lot to make this path much easier for Ukraine, knowing the experience of Poles and looking through this experience that Poland had.
Again, focusing on the values that pertain to immigrants and to refugees, people are amazed that Poland has taken such a vast number of people, as you said. They're not throwing red tape at them. They're not saying you don't have the proper documents. And of course, war refugees and immigration has been one of the most profound issues that the world has debated over the past decade or so, especially here in the United States, including in the European Union. Is there the Poland accepting 1.1 million refugees from Ukraine? Is that something supported by the vast majority of the Polish people? Is it leading to a debate in Poland? Are there people who oppose it? Or are the Polish people mostly in lockstep with the decision of the government to do this incredibly grand humanitarian gesture that has touched the hearts of the entire globe?
Well, I have to say that from the government perspective, this is somewhat not very difficult decision to create these circumstances for refugees to be accepted to Poland, because this approval, more than approval, need to help those people actually come from the crowd. It comes from Polish community, from ordinary people, as I mentioned, who from the very beginning wanted to help. And I see basically pretty much every person I know on social media, on Facebook, on so many other places. At least what they do, they collect different items, different things that the help that they need at the border. But this is really at least. So many people are offering transportation, they offer accommodation, they take those people to their houses, to their homes, for uneven named number of the time. It's just something that it's there, and so many people are involved. So this is not even a question. Government doesn't have to seek the approval for those actions. People of Poland understand it very well, and they are very much involved. Every
They're very behind
person
it.
I know, really.
Do you think, Adrian, that Putin is going to stop in Ukraine, or is Poland concerned? Is Poland taking great defensive military measures that even if they're not sure he's going to come in, they're going to be ready if he does?
Well, first of all, we are members of NATO, and military strength of NATO is largely very large and much bigger than the capacity of Russian military, especially that we see them exposed, and we see that we gave them a lot of credit that they didn't deserve in terms of their military strength. So we feel safe and secure. You said that President Biden promised, but the reality is that countries that are members of NATO have an obligation to support any country that is under a threat by any other country. So being in these structures actually make us a lot safer. You see these movements, lots of troops, including troops from United States, are coming to their stations in Poland. I think they will stay there for a while. Another equipment can be moved and will be moved, and we are deployed, and we will be deployed due to what's happening on the Ukrainian side. So we are in a different situation. We don't see that Putin might be preparing or even willing to really commence any attack on NATO, on any of NATO members. And with this being said, as I mentioned, we know that the ambition, which is long-term strategy, it's not a strategy for a year, but long-term strategy for Putin is to move by doing steps, another steps, basically little steps, then larger steps. He might actually have this ambition to overtake also other countries. And again, this is not something that we see to come in a year time, maybe not even in 2 years time, but we don't know what could potentially happen. First of all, in his mind, when he sees that his mission, his operation in Ukraine is successful. So our focus and our goal is right now to stop him as soon as possible. He needs to see that we are strong to, first of all, to defend ourselves, but also to defend our neighboring countries who can make decisions on their own. Ukraine has been very vocal, and I think that's very historical moment when they were vocal about where they want to be. They don't want to be on the eastern part of the world, so to speak. They want to join West, and they have every right to do it as an independent nation. If we support Ukraine in every possible and reasonable way, as NATO, as European Union, as Poland, as a member of those two bodies, long term we will also defend ourselves and make sure that this threat by Russia is decreased significantly.
Well, let's be clear. What's happening with Ukraine, where Putin is demanding the bending of the knee so that they are utterly subservient to Russia and General Putin in particular, because I'm not even sure Russia is Putin anymore. I'm really hoping the people of Russia will depose him and gain their own freedom. But this attempt by Putin to send in the tanks to get Ukraine to bend its knee and to level whole cities, indiscriminately slaughter civilians in his push for Russian domination of Ukraine is exactly what almost happened to Poland with the rise of the Solidarity movement. Now, John Paul II, who was the Pope at the time, a Polish Pope, one of the greatest friends of the Jewish community has ever had in world history in the Catholic Church, John Paul II is rumored to have actually, I think it's more than a rumor, in fact, to have sent a letter to the leadership of the Soviet Union that if the tanks go into my native country, he wrote this from Rome, of Poland, I will resign the chair of St. Peter and I will be on the front lines. You'll have to run me over in order to invade Poland. But that's what Poland almost faced with the Soviet Union. And now what Ukraine is actually facing with Russia. And I have to say, Adrian, I'm very careful as a Jew, and no doubt you're very careful as a Polish diplomat, given what Hitler did to Poland and given the genocide that Hitler enacted upon. We always have to be careful about making any kind of comparisons to Adolf Hitler. But what is certainly true is that the images that we're seeing from Kiev, from Kharkov, are so similar to the black and white images of the Blitzkrieg against Warsaw and against Poland, and the valiant fight on the part of the people of Poland in 1939 who didn't capitulate, but they were completely overrun because of the vast power of the Nazi war machine. There's a lot of comparisons, and the kind of appeasement that was made to Hitler as he tested the waters with the Western allies. There's also similarities with what Putin has done. But let me be clear. I love you, Adrian. You seem to have a lot more confidence in international agreements than I've come to hear about. I do believe in NATO. I do believe in the commitments of my country, the United States of America. But I don't think it's just a given that every nation's got to be protected, because that's what Poland heard from France and Britain in the Second World War. And of course, France and Britain kept their word. They declared war 2 days after Hitler's invasion, but there was a phony war, as the world calls it today in the history books, for 8 months. There was no war. There was no invasion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what would happen if Poland is invaded? I believe the United States would defend Poland. I believe Poland would defend Poland. That doesn't mean that that Putin, who really is showing signs, if not being unhinged, certainly being bereft of his capacity to calculate on this global chessboard his next moves. He has made serious miscalculations. We don't know what he will do if he's cornered. You're correct. NATO can completely overpower him when it comes to conventional forces. But let's remember, he has the world's largest nuclear deterrent. It's not even a deterrent. For him, it could be an aggressive offensive capability. He's a scary man. He's a tyrant. He's a killer. Human life means absolutely nothing to him. He has contempt for Poland. He has hatred for Poland, as he does for anyone who stands up to him. He's a scary, scary guy. So I was heartened to see American troops who were not just deployed near the border, but who were actually involved in exercises. Let's hope it never comes to that. Let's just go back in our last two questions here, back to the refugee issue. So what will happen, Adrian, with all of these refugees? How can Poland absorb such vast numbers? Does Poland expect them to be there indefinitely? Is Poland going to try to give them a permanent home? What other countries are assisting in absorbing these refugees? This is an incredible escape of more than 1 million people who are escaping for their lives. How will Poland settle them?
Well, I think it's really up to them. We know that this will take a little bit longer than maybe all of us pray for or hope for, looking at other refugee crises. So we have to be prepared for them to stay in Poland indefinitely. Even if they decide to stay permanently, we are happy to accommodate them. The thing is that prior to the pandemic, Poland was actually a destination for a large amount of Ukrainian people who wanted to immigrate to Poland for economic basis. For economic reasons, and that was actually very successful for both parties. So we believe that we can really live together, and we are open, as I said, for even larger amount that is already crossed the Polish border. If they want to stay in Poland, we will create the system that will help to them to basically legalize their stay. That's the first thing, but also to be full members of our societies, including school systems, any forms of support to make them adjust as quickly as possible and enjoy their lives in Poland. For those who are willing to go back to Ukraine, God willing, sooner than later, to make it possible, that's obviously their free choice, and hopefully there will still be homes for them to go back. But also we are in the discussion with our European Union partners and other allies to also create the law that is required for them to go to other countries as well if they wish to. And I know that some of the European countries already made decisions about the quotas of how many people are they ready to accept, admit right away if they are willing to go. So obviously it's not going to happen without the support of international European community, but we are really ready to create a safe haven for them for a longer period of time in Poland if needed. As I said, hopefully soon they'll have a free choice of what to do, what's best for them. But if needed, we can create a home for them in Poland for a longer period of time and accept even more people if they decide to come to Poland.
That's an astonishing statement, that Poland will allow such a large group of refugees who are fleeing for their lives, whose lives you've saved, to remain indefinitely and even permanently and legalize their status. That's an astonishing statement. So let me finish with one final question. Look, Adrian, Poland has electrified the world with its heart and with its openness and with its caring. I'm also very impressed that we don't see people like yourself, very senior Polish diplomats and officials, let alone Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, who, as you know, I know, who I think is a very good friend of our community. Our community, the Jewish community in Poland, has a few differences, but the differences between deep friends who have deep love and mutual commitment to each other, to remember the Holocaust, to fight genocide, to fight evil, to fight tyranny. We're all aligned on those issues, whatever differences exist between allies who are deeply committed to each other. But I've been very impressed that Polish officials have not been bragging, have not been saying, look what we're doing. It's actually been done very quietly with a lot of humility. And you've shown the world a great example of the biblical idea of welcoming the stranger. So let me just ask you one final question. There was tension recently between Israel, the eternal Jewish homeland of the Jewish people, and Poland over a restitution law. You know that I was very vocal in saying, look, I believe restitution law needs to be changed, but Poland is a country we must express our continued gratitude to. This is now the Jewish community, well before the invasion of Ukraine by the monster Putin. I said we have to show Putin, we have to show Putin nothing but contempt. We have to show Poland gratitude for their preservation of the camps, the preservation of the memory of the 6 million, their real dedication to seeing, God willing, Jewish life now flourish in Poland. I've been to the Krakow Jewish Festival. I wish I could go again this year, God willing. I wrote my book, Holocaust Holiday. You and I have had a partnership in promoting anti-genocide memory and human rights. Now we see, thank God, let's call it a mending of the fences between Israel and Poland. There was tension, especially between Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, who I know and who I like, but I think he, used language which he probably did not have to. But Lapid has taken a very strong position against Putin, very strong. He even said today that Israel is probably going to now co-sponsor. Israel signed on to the UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, last Friday, condemnation of Russia's invasion, but they didn't co-sponsor the UNGA's act. Now he said they're going to co-sponsor. And it was Lapid who said immediately at the beginning of the invasion, we want to mend fences with Poland. And that gave me, and I called you, Adrian, and I said, that's a beautiful thing for us to hear. I want to see the Jewish nation, the Poland nation as brothers and as sisters, God willing. So how is your government feeling about this, God willing, restored relationship with Israel?
Well, we are obviously very happy about it, but believe it or not, we don't calculate with our approach towards the situation in Ukraine and the refugees of different ethnicity or nationality. So eventually, if the outcome is that This will help us out to sort out different relations with different countries, even those that has been recently difficult for different reasons. We gladly accept it. We appreciate it very much. But again, this is not the moment to calculate. As you said, this is nothing to brag about either. I think this is just a moment to do what's right to do. And I think this is something that the international community see and understands, and maybe eventually also appreciate the most, that this is just done from the bottom of our hearts. Really, we just do it because this is the right thing to do, and not for any sort of political fruits that might come out of it. I guess on the personal note, I think that you're right, that this will help to sort of rebuild Polish image in a way that maybe it has been distorted recently in some aspects, and this will be eventually the positive outcome that we will sort things out with on different levels with different issues that has been going on recently. But this is only a side effect. We don't do anything on that purpose. We just need to help those people as fast as possible for those who can escape. Remember that we are also very active on the Ukrainian side. We also in contact with Ukrainian authorities. We're sending our logistics to Ukraine to help those people escape. Remember that we are happy that we saved so many lives, also including other countries that they escaped to. But the problem is still ongoing. There are still millions of people whose life are under the threat, serious threat, and they need to be evacuated as soon as possible. We are involved in that as well, and we accept every help. Whoever can be of an ally with Poland to do so, we will gladly collaborate.
Adrian, let me just thank you for our friendship. Let me thank you especially on behalf of and let me also thank you on behalf of just the citizens of the world, of all of God's children, for what Poland is doing to save a million plus lives. For those of us who have been, my wife, Debbie, who you know so well, our wives are good friends. Debbie can't even watch the news. She looks at children being bombed. She looks at, and she said to me, I can't even watch it. I do watch it because I want to make sure that you and I have these kinds of conversations that galvanizes the world to oppose Putin and to save the people of Ukraine. But on behalf of all of God's children, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the government of Poland, people of Poland, for everything you're doing to save millions of lives. Let me also just say that my colleague who works with me, the World Values Network in general, and Values University in particular, Gabriel Bell, who you know quite well, is I think he's in either Paris or Geneva right now, and Gabe works for and has worked for the UNHRC, the United Nations HCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees. And he wants to go to Poland and help the government of Poland, people of Poland, to absorb the Ukrainian refugees. So a lot of people want to help. They want to go to Poland. They want to make sure they can help the people settle. And finally, let me just say again, about 6 weeks ago, maybe almost 2 months ago, you and I, we collaborated on a very important event in New York City in Carnegie Hall. At the height of Omicron, it wasn't easy. Thank God we kept everybody safe, masked, and the speakers had to be tested to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Wannsee Conference that planned the Holocaust on January 20th, 1942. It was there that Reinhard Heydrich and Adolf Eichmann decided that they would put Auschwitz and other death camps in Poland, on Polish territory, to annihilate the Jewish people. And Poland today preserves those camps and makes sure that my people are never forgotten. And all the Poles who were murdered by the Nazis are never forgotten. And it was an amazing event. You did it with me. You spoke beautifully that night. So thank you for your friendship. I hope our friendship will continue to prosper for the benefit of humanity, the benefit of the Polish and Jewish nations, and the benefit for freedom worldwide. God bless you, Adrian.
Thank you so much. God bless you too.
Thank you. Okay.